President Trump at the White House yesterday, not moving off of his must-haves when it comes to Iran.
What was the sticking point over? You said it was over nuclear.
It was over nuclear, very similar. Yeah, very good. I guess you're listening. It's over the fact that they will never have a nuclear weapon. Iran, you marking it down? Iran will not have a nuclear weapon. And we agreed to a lot of things, but they didn't agree to that. And I think they will agree to it. I'm almost sure of it. In fact, I am sure of it. If they don't agree, there's no deal. There'll never be a deal. Iran will not have a nuclear weapon, and we're going to get the dust back. We'll get it back either. We'll get it back from...
We'll get it back or we'll take it, is what he said. Never. Absolutes. Speaking in absolutes, which is not something Trump is wont to do. Always wants to give himself wiggle room, but not on this. And he also added that they're not going to be allowed to extort the world either.
We can't let a country blackmail or extort the world, because that's what they're doing. They're really blackmailing the world. We're not going to let that happen. And, you know, the amazing thing is we don't... Can you believe this? We don't use this trade. We don't need this trade. We have our own oil and gas, much more than we need. We have more oil and gas than Saudi Arabia. Think of this. We produce more. Saudi Arabia, and add Russia to it. Substantially more. And by next year, we'll have double that amount. So we don't need it, but the world needs it. And many ships are heading to our country right now as we speak to load up with the best. Really, I guess you could say, somebody said the best and sweetest. I don't know exactly what sweet is, but when it relates to oil, it's a good thing. But they're coming to our country right now. There are many boats coming to our country. Now, it could very well be this is going to be settled before that. We've been called this morning by the right people, the appropriate people, and they want to work a deal. They would like to work a deal.
Is it your anticipation, Mr. President, that other countries will assist in this effort to blockade Iran and those specific...
Yeah, other countries are going to also.
Which countries, sir?
We don't need other countries, frankly, but they've offered the services. We'll let it be known probably tomorrow.
And so 120-some tankers making their way to the Gulf of America to get their hands on that light sweet crude the president was referencing, and all that means is that's the light sweet crude oil best for refining gasoline, kerosene, diesel. Miyad Maleki, I mentioned him last hour, just to mention again the summary here of the impact of the blockade, if sustained. A naval blockade imposes $435 million per day in combined economic damage. Iranian storage fills in 13 days, forcing well shut-ins that cause permanent reservoir damage. The rial, their currency, enters terminal collapse, running right now 47.5% inflation. Iran's alternatives outside the Strait can replace less than 10% of Gulf throughput. The blockade makes continued resistance economically impossible. That is the view with the supporting data of the senior fellow at the Foundation for Defensive Democracies. I'm not sure if our next guest agrees, though, so let's hear him out. Daniel DePetris is a fellow at Defense Priorities and a syndicated foreign affairs columnist at the Chicago Tribune and Newsweek. Daniel, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Good morning, Dan. How you doing?
Good. Glad to have you. And so you say, in a piece I read that you wrote at Unheard, that the blockade will not bring the Iranians to heel.
Yeah, I mean, the economic impact of the blockade, it will be significant. I don't think there's any doubt in anybody's mind that the Iranians, if the blockade is executed the way the administration wants it to be executed, the Iranians will lose a significant amount of revenue. And obviously it takes revenue, it takes money to wage a war. The question I have is, will this economic contraction result in the political concessions that the administration is asking or demanding of the Iranians? Which, you know, as the president has stated, is no nuclear capability in Iran whatsoever, no enrichments, or at least a long-term freeze on enrichment capacities. And of course, like a cutting material support to regional proxies that the Iranians have used for decades. I don't know if that's going to occur. That's a really, really tall order for the Iranians to sign on. The Trump is betting that the Iranians won't have an option but to sign on. Right. That's the whole strategy.
Right. They have one option. I mean, and it seems like, without saying it in these terms, I mean, it seems like this is Trump's position. They can take the window or the stairs, and if they insist on being martyrs to their cause in their own mind, then we can make that happen.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think Trump is basically giving them an ultimatum. Sign what we want you to sign, or the war is going to continue. We've heard this from Trump before many times with respect to Iran. Even before the conflict started back in late February, Trump was kind of issuing a lot of demands and ultimatums to the Iranians. Iran refused to sign on, and we've had 7 weeks of conflict. So I would just, I would caution people assuming that the strategy will work. All I'm saying is that there's another alternative, which is, the war strings on. The Iranians bet that they can survive whatever Trump throws at them, which, as far as I can tell, is going to be more bombing, perhaps over a wider target set, including power plants and energy infrastructure. So we'll just have to see. I'm just taking a more cautious approach than others.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's fair, but I mean, it's different now. I mean, he is in flagrante delicto at this point, so to speak. As you say, we're 40 plus days in, and he wants this to get done, and he's a guy that's very results oriented. There's no question about that. And so what I think the questions about doing what it takes are being answered or have been answered in large measure over the last month and a half. And the other question I'll put to you that I put to Michael Evans from the Times of London when we spoke with him last hour is, okay, so say they try to hang on because, the whole world can burn. And as long as they stay in some idea of power, that's fine with the mullahs. Okay, I get that. But what exactly do they have to retaliate with? I mean, at some point, you're basically cornered with no options other than capitulation, whether that capitulation takes the form of, death by ballistic missile or it takes the form of white flag.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question that the Iranians are sort of running out of cards here. The one card that they have played pretty well, in my opinion, is the energy card. Shutting down Hormuz and kind of making worldwide oil and gas prices high. The logic behind that is pretty straightforward. It's not only to hit the pocketbook of Americans, but to increase the political cost of Trump's position and kind of force him to back down instead of escalate. The administration, I don't know if the administration is still intent on escalating. There is some movement towards, or a rumor at least this morning, that another round of negotiations could occur, perhaps as soon as this weekend. So we'll see. I think both parties right now are sort of at a crossroads and kind of determining what their strategy is and what they want to do long term. Trump is going to, if talks occur, Trump will enter negotiations with a firm hand, as he has previously. The Iranians are going to stick to their position. So the question is who blinks first? Is Trump going to blink first, or the Iranians going to blink first? And that's what people are really kind of waiting. Whoever blinks first is going to lose the war.
Well, something else to throw into the mix, because I think some people that are sort of reflexively opposed to this campaign think that it is wildly unpopular and it's going to cost the Republicans the midterms and that Trump is in free fall and there's chaos and so forth. CBS YouGov poll has a majority of those surveyed supporting staying with this until there's regime change, and 55 to 45, and a supermajority of those surveyed by CBS and YouGov have a supermajority supports the demands that the Trump administration is making: the enriched uranium, ending the nuclear program, reopening the strait, defunding the terrorist proxies. Supermajority support that. So, there may be some, within the MAGA universe that have a bit of a thick bubble on this, that actually there is a pretty good support, and I think in large part because you haven't we haven't suffered significant losses on the battlefield. I mean, again, every death is tragic for our armed services, but I mean, relatively speaking, and Iran is getting backed into a corner. And if you're paying attention beyond just reading the New York Times, you're seeing the same things that we're talking about.
I don't think Trump needs to worry too much about political, how much political support he has, at least from the Republicans. There is the Tucker Carlsons and Megyn Kellys of the world are obviously firmly opposed to the war and using their platforms, and we can debate whether or not they're correct or not. In terms of numbers, Trump really does not have to worry about the Republican Party. It seems like the party's firmly behind what he's trying to do, at least at this point. If the war goes on longer than the administration anticipates, which is a possibility, you could possibly see that support drip, not significantly, but it could drip a little bit lower down the totem pole. Particularly if obviously energy prices increase or stabilize to a high point. You're already hearing people in the agricultural belt of the country worrying, of course, about fertilizer prices, and we are in the middle of the planting season. So all of this is sort of relative. Right now, he's got pretty significant support within his base, agreeing with what his policy is. I don't know how long that is sustained for. It could change depending on, the war's outcome. And there was a time when the Iraq War was popular, right? The first several months of the conflict, we had 75% of Americans supported that war until it turned into a dumpster fire and the worst catastrophe ever in U.S. foreign policy of this century. So the numbers can move.
No, of course, there's snapshots in time. But I'm just saying you have Trump, depending on who's survey. I mean, Real Clear Politics Average has his approval rating like in the low 40s, let's say, the aggregate. Well, so he's personally not that popular, but what he's doing in Iran has a lot of people who otherwise don't like him supporting what he's doing. So, I mean, that's a little bit different dynamic.
Sure, and it helps that Iran is sort of like the poster child of evil, right?
Yes, that does. Well, right, which is, it adds a lot of legitimacy to what he's doing. Yeah,
the Iranians have been, the primary or one of the primary adversaries of the United States since the revolution over 4 decades ago. So all I'm saying is that numbers can move.
Sure.
If the economic trouble gets worse, you'll see the polls kind of go down. I personally don't really care about the polls one way or the other. I'm looking at.
No, I understand, but I'm just throwing that in the mix because it's
Sure.
one of those domestic political considerations that are certainly made.
Of course.
I wanted to get your take on something else too. J.D. Vance was asked about this yesterday during his appearance on Brett Baer's program, since he just recently returned from a stop in Budapest before he went to Pakistan for those talks on Saturday. And that was Viktor Orban losing his prime ministership in Hungary. This is what Vance had to say about Orban and his loss.
I think that Viktor Orban's a great guy who's done a very good job. I think that his legacy in Hungary is transformational, 16 years fundamentally changing that country. But one of the reasons why we decided to do that, Brett, is not because, we can't read polls. We certainly knew there was a very good chance that Viktor would lose that election. We did it because he's one of the few European leaders we've seen who's been willing to stand up to the bureaucracy in Brussels that has been very, very bad for the United States. So, for example, when you see a European bureaucrat go after an American company, sometimes the only vote no, the only vote to protect that American interest has been Viktor Orban. We didn't go because we expected Viktor to cruise to an election victory. We went because it was the right thing to do, to stand behind a person who had stood by us for a very long time. So this wasn't about Russia, and fundamentally it wasn't about Europe. It was about the United States and the fact that he's been a good partner to both me and the president personally, but also to the United States. I'm sad that he lost. We'll work very well, I'm sure, with the next prime minister of Hungary. But it wasn't a bad trip at all, because it's worth standing by people, even if you don't win every race.
So it seems to me I have a little bit more complicated view of Orban than J.D. Vance does, or even our friend Rod Dreher, who I have great respect for. Walter Russell Mead, writing in the Journal about Orban, Neither Mr. Orban's alt-right American fans nor his cosmopolitan liberal critics ever really understood him. He was no Churchillian defender of Western civilization against the barbarian hordes, nor was he a Putin-esque autocrat building a permanent dictatorship that would keep in power for life. A crusading defender of Western values would have been less eager to court Chinese support. An autocrat would have found ways to avoid or control an election that threatened his power. Mr. Orban was ultimately more impresario than statesman. And there's always something theatrical about politics, especially in countries like Hungary, where memories of glorious but irrecoverable past dominate the public imagination. So I'm like I said, I'm sort of more in the Walter Russell Mead camp, frankly, on Orban. But I want to get your take on that defeat and whether it has any serious implications outside of Hungary.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, Orban has been commonly characterized as sort of like a Russian proxy, right? He's basically doing Vladimir Putin's dirty work in Europe. That's the mainstream consensus. I viewed Orban as a hyper-nationalist, meaning, he does not support the European Union dictating what Hungary's domestic and foreign policy should be. He's very, very reticent to kind of get involved in mainstream European political thought. He wants to do what he believes is correct for Hungary rather than Europe as a whole, and that really kind of went against the kind of pan-Europeanism that the EU was founded upon, right? So he was definitely the EU's most thorny bush inside the plantation, if you will.
That's what I liked about him. Yeah. Yeah. Right. I mean, I don't think Orban was. He's viewed as a dictator by a lot of people. I don't believe that. I think he was more of an illiberal nationalist who just didn't want to be co-opted by European Union, European Union politics. He was especially annoying for the policy on Ukraine, where he basically used Hungary's veto in the EU political institutions to stop various donations to the Ukrainians, and the 90 billion euro donation package. He was against that. Now that he's out and his government is being dissolved as we speak, you're going to see that package go through pretty quickly. The Europeans are going to be consolidating more behind the Ukrainian position than when Orban was in office. I think that's obvious and pretty clear at this point. So it doesn't have much of an impact on the United States. It's more of an impact on European foreign policy in Ukraine. Daniel DePetris, fellow at Defense Priorities and a syndicated foreign affairs columnist at the Chicago Tribune and Newsweek. Daniel, thanks for joining us as always. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it.
And he joined us at on the alphawealthgroup.com answer line.
The more you listen, the more you'll know. This is Chicago's Morning Answer. Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Chicagoland certified financial planning professional Tim Stearns discusses taxes in retirement.
Most people are paying more in taxes and keeping less of their money to live and do what they enjoy. That's why we've put out the retirement tax bill calculator online. You can see with your own eyes just how much you might be overpaying. It's a valuable tool, $500 value, but we made it free for you to view and run your own numbers at MVPCFP.com. That's MVPCFP.com.
To run your retirement tax bill calculator, go to MVPCFP.com.